Hi, and welcome to Toni Time. Our show today is going to be a little more serious about topics that are going on in the world today. And right here at home in Maine, we have a lot of things happening unjust, and we're going to talk about it a little bit. On my show today, we have Colleen, who is an amazing woman. And she's been involved in people who have been accused of rape but didn't do it. So we're going to talk about that today. And welcome to the show, Colleen.
Thank you, Toni. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, how have you been helping?
Well, basically, in situations where women have been claiming that they've been physically beaten, that's where we'll start with that.
All right.
And I know of several individuals that have claimed this, and it's been false right from the get-go. But the men in their lives have paid an enormous price, time behind bars for no justification. And the sad part is the way the law is written in Maine, the law enforcement is mandated that they have to make an arrest when they go to a domestic violence. They have to separate, and the way they usually separate is by arresting the man, even if in some instances they know they can't prove it, but they know that the man is not at fault. And so the man spends time in jail with no justification, and his reputation gets wrecked in the process. He is he's exposed to things in jail he would not have been exposed to otherwise. Right. And his self-esteem is right down the tubes. He has a hard time with being able to get his equilibrium back. Workforce,
so.
The workforce is,
Sure.
Nobody wants to hire somebody that's been accused of having beaten up on a wife or a girlfriend.
Let me stop you here for a minute.
Okay.
Okay, if they're not guilty, why are they being put into a prison?
That is a good question, and it goes right back to the mandate. It's easier to prove that I'm not going to say that because that's not the way to go with it. Men, once they're incarcerated, have a harder time proving their innocence. And the reason for that is because the woman is still free. She's on the outside. She's presenting all the false evidence against the man.
Yeah.
And it's poor me, gets the sympathy, gets the help from all the agencies, while the man is in jail. If he's lucky, he'll get a decent attorney of the day who will be enormously overworked with many, many cases and not be able to do justice to his case. We had an episode of a young man who had an excellent attorney, but she was so overworked that she felt that the safest place for him to be was to be behind bars so that his wife could not continue hurting him on the outside.
That doesn't sound...
It does not make sense, but that was the way it worked out. And the sad part of it was, she told him right to his face, she said, "You're safer behind bars." She said, "Let this thing play out. You're safer behind bars because at least she can't cause any more problems for you while you're behind bars." In other words, more false accusations.
Right.
And I could see where she was coming from with that. But
yeah, but I would think he could protect himself.
That's right. And like I said to him, I said, you could ask to wear the cuff, whatever needs to be used to show proof of where you are, what time you're there, and the whole 9 yards. And of course, he didn't like that idea, but I told him, I said, that can prove your innocence right there.
Right.
And she doesn't even have to know that you're wearing it.
Right.
So as it turned out, he spent 8 months in jail. 7.5 to 8 months in jail for something he did not do.
Now, why are the women, I mean, I'm sure they're crying. I'm sure they're carrying on.
Oh, yes.
But wouldn't you investigate their story as well?
You would think that would be the case.
Yeah.
But in this particular instance that I'm thinking about, they instantly went with the idea that it was him. They didn't even bother to really check into the evidence. Once they started checking into the evidence, and a private detective was hired finally to prove this young man's innocence, the way it worked out was he's still holding the baggage, the leftover baggage from the case, and he still is under probation, which he never should be, because it didn't happen. But the Attorney General that was, the district attorney that was handling the case had his mind made up that he was going to pursue, even though he knew that the evidence was there. He said, well, somebody did it. We're going to prove that it was him. As it turned out, Toni, they had enough evidence to prove at that point that she was not only lying, but that she had done this to herself.
Yeah.
And the district attorney just turned his head.
You know, I mean, I don't want the audience to get the wrong opinion. I mean, I do believe a lot of women have suffered abuse. I believe that a lot of women have been raped, things have happened. But now we're into a day and age where women can just scream rape.
Yes, they can. Yep. And you have young women or teenagers that are not yet of the age of majority or a legal age, dressing up to appear to be much older than they are. And then the poor man gets caught in between. I actually had from a local organization that works with women in crisis, be it rape or other instances, come to a place where I was living at the time. And I was homeless at the time. I was living at the YWCA. And this group leader proceeded to tell all the women, she was talking about empowerment. She proceeded to tell all the women that when there is, if you are on a date and things get hot and heavy, and you are willing and able, and you decide at the last minute, and once there has been a physical penetration, they have the right to claim rape. And I said, how does that possibly work? I said, you're sitting here telling these women that they need to empower themselves. They're not going to empower themselves because they're all of a sudden afraid of what mom will say or an ex-boyfriend might say, and that after this has already happened, to cry rape. She said, well, if they decide once this has happened that, how did she put it? That they've changed their mind during the actual act, and the young man is still in the process. She said the attitude is that it is rape. I said, no, it's not. It's not date rape. It's not even rape. It's the fact that she turned chicken and she, she doesn't know how to deal with it. So I said, she's going to wreck a young man's life for the sake of claiming rape when it was not rape to save face. I said, there has got to be a law put into place for false accusation against domestic violence, rape, date rape, any and all of the above. The woman has got to pay the price for her decisions that she makes. She has got to be willing to accept the responsibility if she is going to claim these acts have happened when in fact they haven't, and she's even gone out of her way to perpetrate them on herself in the case of domestic violence. She's got to pay the price. I'm sorry. That is breaking the law.
It is. And I feel that, I don't want us to sound like we're down
No, we're not.
women. And men have been abused.
That's right. Oh,
Men have been abused by women. It goes both ways.
it sure does.
This has been going on for years. This day and age, I mean, as we know, there's more of it.
It sure is.
20 years ago, it might have happened,
But it was kept
you
quiet.
never heard anything.
Exactly.
People kind of went on, or maybe mentally they were kind of ruined because of what happened, whatever it was. Now it's becoming an issue, and it's becoming 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and just like you and I were talking before the show. I mean, 30, 40 years ago, these men, these women were much younger. They're 40 years younger, whether they were a movie star, whether they were a politician. You don't know how they're thinking. I mean, they wanted to get together. Now, 40 years later, you're saying it's rape.
No,
And there's no
not
evidence.
acceptable.
There's no evidence
That's right.
when you're going back that far.
That's right.
It's her word against his, and all these people now on the news who are having a ruined career.
That's right.
Everything they've worked for is gone.
Absolutely,
It's
Toni.
just gone.
That's so true. And the sad part of it is, too, that in this particular instance, this young man had been living, they were married and had been for about 20 years or so, had 2 sons, and one of the boys was old enough to know what was really going on. The other one was young enough to believe the mom.
Yeah.
And it wrecked his relationship with that younger one.
Yeah.
The older one finally was able to get away from it by taking a new attitude and a new direction in his life. So now both boys have reconciled with their dad. Thank you for that, you know. But in the meantime, he's lost face within the community of individuals that were important to him for jobs. He's self-employed, so and he was fortunate enough to be able to get decent work, but it took a while.
Yeah.
And how do you wipe out something that was so public in front of so many people and get your mindset in a healthy direction?
It takes a strong person.
It sure does.
It takes
Absolutely, it does.
a lot of strength,
Exactly.
inner strength coming out to go and plow through this.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Because you can do a ton of good, but you do one bad thing and you really didn't do it. People always believe the bad.
Isn't that true? That is so
You can do 1,000 good things.
Exactly.
That one bad thing
Wipes out all the good. Yep.
Yeah.
It does. And it shouldn't be that way.
No, it shouldn't, but it is.
It is. And I know of another case. I've seen so many of them. In this other particular instance, the young man was married, and the wife was very volatile, given to volatile, just like this other one. Wanted things her way when they didn't go her way, or if there was an argument, whatever the case might be, she would result to viciousness. Well, in this one particular case, she tried to run him down with a car. He got back up, and she came after him again with the car. Luckily, there was no damage done, and he was able to get away from her temporarily.
Yeah.
But that's another issue right there. He's a man, and he didn't report it. And I asked him, I said, why didn't you report this?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I don't want the mother of my children in jail. And I said, don't you understand that one of these times that when she picks up a knife, she might make a connection?
Yeah.
Or when she comes at you with that car, she might not stop? He said, well, she didn't stop. I said, I know she didn't. Yeah. She was right there twice. And I said, by the grace of God, because of your size, your body was able to sustain the impact. But his mindset, and I think deep down it was, who's going to believe me?
True.
You know, these men have a hard time because It's always thought that the man goes after the woman,
Yeah.
not that the woman goes after the man. But
Exactly.
it is in epidemic proportions in the state of Maine. I don't know about the rest of the country, but in Maine, it has become a new trend for a woman when she wants things her way and they're not going her way to make false accusations, whether it's rape or he beat me or...
But that mentality, I mean, that kind of mentality going back, that has to come from the way they grew up or parent. I mean, I always feel the parents.
It's not always the parents, though, Toni. I've seen instances where it is something that, a low self-esteem within the woman.
Yeah.
I know of an instance where she came from an excellent background. She truly did. In some instances, you're right.
Yeah.
It does have to do with that. But in other instances, in this particular case, she, that I'm thinking about, she came from a good background and no reason, at least from all appearances, let's
Right,
put it that way. There could have been verbal abuse or maybe just low self-esteem on her part, and she didn't know how to project a different image of herself to herself.
True.
And this, I know that sounds convoluted.
No, no,
but,
no.
we
No, I
we
can-
are our own worst critics.
Oh, we are.
And as a result, I have found that if a woman has a low self-esteem of herself, she's going to project that to everybody else. And it's almost an invitation to say, come and get me, come and get me.
Yeah.
And not always. I have
Yeah,
to
no,
give you
no.
credit for that. But in some instances, and then when she takes that attitude, her empowerment comes from being able to lay that at someone else or to lay it on someone else. It helps kind of the bullying syndrome.
Right. Well, it would be.
And that's where, that would be my understanding of it.
Now, how did you get involved in all this, Colleen?
Because I've seen so much of it.
I mean, you're really involved. You go to the prisons.
Yes, I do. And I'm starting up again after I took about 3.5, 4 years off.
Yeah.
And now that I have a vehicle again, I'm starting up with Cumberland County Jail. I'll be going back there. And I'm waiting to get my schedule to start that. And I will be working with the men and the women there and working with them to help reorganize their thoughts. That's the first step.
Now, are you approved by the prison to come in?
Yes, yes. Okay, I'm sorry, I should
Yeah.
say that. I go in to do Bible studies with these men and women. Most of them have no affiliation of any kind, and I'm not there as an affiliate of any church. I am there to show them that there is a higher power. When you are feeling like you are drained and there is nothing there left in reserve, that there is a higher power that you can tap into to get your strength and to redirect your thoughts and your feelings and your life. And then as I'm working with them on those issues, the other issues come up. They start to feel safe enough to know that whatever they tell me, I'm not going to mention names, I'm not going to take it out of the jail, it stays there. These two cases I mentioned are people that I'm friends with. So this has nothing to do, I didn't meet these individuals in jail. These are part of my life. The folks in jail, their issues stay within the jail. Unless they want to make them.
Unless they want to come out.
Exactly,
Right.
absolutely. And I would invite them to do so.
Oh, I would invite them on my show.
Thank you, because I'm
No.
sure that it would be of help to them.
Well, I think it would be very good for them to come on the show so the audience can hear another side.
That's right, exactly.
No one is debating. No, we're
right.
we're really talking about feelings. We're really talking about how they feel and coming out. So with you going in, now are you alone when you go in?
Yes, I am.
So you're the only one doing this.
Well, I'm the only one doing it, but there are other volunteers that go in.
Oh, okay.
And at different times and different areas. But with me, I've always felt, and this, at the risk of sounding ridiculous, I have always felt that when I walk through those doors, and the reason I need to back up a second, one of the individuals that I know said to me, a very good friend as a matter of fact, she said, "Aren't you afraid of going into the jail?" She said, "Aren't you afraid that there could be, you know, somebody might do some harm to you?" And I looked at her, I said, "No, not at all." And I said, the funny part of it is that I'm in a room with 25 people, you know, these women, or in pre-release, it was women and men that I was working with. But in the Maine campus, it is the women that I'll be working with. And I told her, I said, "No, not at all." I said, "I feel like God is standing there holding that door open and saying, 'Come on in, Colleen, welcome home.'" Yeah. And that's the way I really feel. Yeah. I get emotional, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Only because of the fact that it's a real passion of mine.
And I can tell, I mean, when I first met you, Colleen took my on-camera class. That's how we met. And my second class, the on-camera class, we had 4 women.
Yes.
None of you knew each other.
No, we didn't.
And in this room, and we did 3 Saturdays, they became a unit. You became...
Yes, we did. Bonded.
Right. I mean, there was trust, there was safety. Mm-hmm. All 4 of the women are from different parts of life. Mm-hmm. And that's how we had met, and it grew into something really quite wonderful. But I admire you for going in, following your passion, you know, and it's a passion that I believe not a lot of people would understand.
I think you're right about that, Toni, because even this lady that I have been friends with for years, she was from my church. Mm-hmm. And she just said, "Oh, but you know, I have found that in my life that we all are given different gifts, different passions." Right. And I just looked at her, I said, "You know, honey," I said, "it's not yours." I said, "Your passion is something different." I said, "This is mine. And it's been given to me. It's a very special gift given to me from God Himself. That's my belief." And as a result, when and this isn't to toot my own horn, but one of the officers there that I knew, became more friendly with, had made the statement to me. She said, "You know, Colleen," she said, "you don't know what a difference it makes when you leave here." She said, "Because you have brought something." I said, "It's not me." I said, "It is God bringing it through me. I'm just the instrument. I'm the tool. I'm the one that's willing to walk through that door and to reach out to these people." And I said, and I share with them, "Hey, it's by the grace of God. I could be sitting right where you are, all because I didn't get caught when I was younger doing things that I could have gotten caught for and served time for." And I said, we all are in those bad choices at times.
When you're younger, you are.
Exactly. That's part of growing up.
That's part of growing up.
Yep. And becoming an adult. And I told her, I said, "You know, I thank you for saying that, because it means a lot to know that it is making a difference." She said that their attitudes are different when I leave, and that they seem to be feeling more hopeful. Yeah. And I said, "Well, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that." You know, and it didn't. It helped me to know that I was on the right path, that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
What is the age range of the people?
At this particular jail, the age range is going to blow you away. 18 or traveling through to 70s.
Really?
Honest to God. No joke.
Wow.
I was blown away.
Yeah.
I was blown away.
That's the men now. What about the women?
No, that's the women I'm talking about.
Oh, that's the women?
That was the women. It applies to the men too. But the first time I ran into that was with the women. I couldn't believe it. And I didn't say a word about it. And I found out that there were more than one in there at that age. And for many different reasons, they were there. One thing I will say, that most of your arrests now, and this isn't my say-so, this came directly from within the jail itself. I was told that it ranges between 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 arrests are either drug-related or alcohol-related. And the crimes that come about in order to meet the habit, to keep the habit going, so that they don't go into withdrawal, because withdrawal
It's painful.
is very painful, physically and emotionally. It is very draining. And it's sad because basically they'll do anything to avoid going through that.
Yeah.
But what they don't realize and understand is when they go through it and they come out on the other side, they are stronger.
Yeah, they are.
And they don't feel like they are because they are so emotionally and physically drained. But they are stronger spiritually. And
You would have to be.
yes, exactly.
You would have to be to go through that.
Exactly. Yep. And right now, Sheriff King is working. Portland doesn't have it yet. Scarborough has it, and some other towns have it, where if you can get help through the system, through the legal system, to get off these scenarios, whether it be alcohol or drug. And up at, I want to get my facts straight. I'm trying to think this through. Sheriff King was telling me that they are going to have an on-campus building where people that are coming into the program that are drug addicted or alcohol addicted will be able to receive help there.
Great.
And he asked me if I'd be willing to volunteer, and I said, absolutely, I would. And now that I have a car, I'll be able to. So.
Wow.
So it's a long, involved process, but it's one of those things that, as they said, 8 or 9 out of 10, when you stop to think about this, driving down the road, whether it's legally prescribed drug that the person is taking too much of, an illegal substance, or alcohol, 9 out of 10 people, or 8 out of 10 you meet on the road. That's a scary thought.
It's pretty scary. And a lot of them are prescription drugs.
Yes, that's what I was meant when I said legal.
That people get hooked on.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I have a friend, and she lives in Kennebunk, and she came to the dog park one day, and I've known her forever, and she's a crazy personality. But she was really kind of out of it that day. Couldn't remember what we talked about. So she got home and she texted me and she said, I'm so sorry I was out of it. I took 3 Ativan and didn't realize I took 3. How can you not realize you took 3?
Yep. Exactly.
And she was on the road driving.
Mm-hmm. I was with somebody in a car that was taking one of the prescribed drugs. And she was falling asleep behind the wheel. And there were 2 other kids in that car that were not hers.
Yeah.
Her son was there, but the other 2 kids were also there. They were her sister's children. And I just kept praying, and I'm watching and watching. And finally, when we got out of the car, I just said, thank you, God, for keeping us all safe. Because literally, honestly, she was falling asleep behind the wheel. And I kept speaking to her and nudging her. And at one point, I saw a big 18-wheeler coming, and I thought, oh boy, now we've had it.
Now we've had it, yeah.
And thank you, God, we didn't.
Well, you know, I mean, I hear all the time, I read in the paper, there are so many nonprofit organizations who say, if you have a problem, an addiction, come to us. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of help out there.
There is. But if a person doesn't have the medical insurance, that nonprofit agency can't help you.
So if they're addicted or if they're living, how can they have insurance? I mean, that's kind of an oxymoron.
It is an oxymoron, absolutely. Um, the That's why I think Sheriff King is doing what he's doing with the situation in Alfred. As people are going in, he's trying to get them and bring them out of it, because that's basically now, that's the way most people are detoxing, is in jail.
Yeah, I know.
And that's the only place that really, I mean, it's as a result of their behavior and their actions, and they know they're the first ones that will say, hey, it's my fault, I did what I did. But by the same token, if you are in a situation where you want to get the help, there are a lot of places that you can't unless you have the insurance. And as you said, Toni, it's an oxymoron.
It is.
Now, Salvation Army, you can go. But the thing is, you have to go to a hospital to get the detox, and then you can go in. They have a
That would be
6-month
fine.
program. Yes, absolutely.
That would be fine.
Yes, yep. And they have a 6-month program called ARC, Adult Rehabilitation Centers. And what happens is, when you've been detoxed, you go in, you agree to follow the rules and regulations that they have, which all these programs have.
Sure.
And you can stay there for up to 6 months. And they will help you eventually to get a job, to find housing. But they're also working on the spiritual component,
Sure.
the spiritual part, which means that they're showing you that you are not in this world alone.
Right.
You are not here alone.
And you're not.
And you're not, is
I
right.
mean, you might not have family around you.
Right.
Your family may have disowned you, whatever it may be, but there are people around you if you just reach out.
And that's the hardest part, because there is no one that can beat up on themselves, or that can beat up on a drug addict or an alcoholic worse than the drug addict himself.
Yeah.
They keep pounding themselves down and pounding themselves down, and that's why they don't reach out, because the embarrassment.
And they don't seem like they're worth it.
That they don't.
In their minds.
And you're right, Toni, they don't. That was going to be my next
Yeah.
little. They have convinced themselves that they are worthless.
I have a cousin, I just found this out on Saturday in Indiana. My cousin, who's my age, has 3 children. March, her son passed away of kidney failure. Her daughter, who's probably 21, took it real hard.
Oh, I'll bet.
Really hard. Now, her family has disowned her. And that's my aunt and uncle. They have disowned her. She's a good-hearted person. Her daughter, I guess a couple weeks ago, OD'd on heroin to try to kill herself. The pain was too much of losing a brother, and she lost 4 or 5 other friends. And now she is in prison for a year. And just what you said a few minutes ago, it is going to help her go through the detox. Hopefully there's someone like you going in there, but we're talking Indiana. And that does make a difference.
It sure does.
It does.
Yeah.
And this is in my family. I'm not ashamed. I'm not anything. My heart goes out to them. I'm there to help if I can. But she was suffering.
They do suffer.
They do suffer.
So deeply. And it's so easy to say, oh, I'm going to be done with this person. You know, thank God I've never become addicted to any substance other than caffeine.
Yeah, well, caffeine. But my cousin, she is a wonderful mother. She's got a good heart. She's a giver. Her children are all that way. But the daughter just was going through so much pain.
And that's the hard part for them to grasp, is that pain, some of that pain you're going to have to learn how to live with, because it's inflicted.
Yeah.
From your regrets and your embarrassment and wishing you had made different choices. But the other part is that that pain can be somewhat relieved or alleviated if you reach out to people. And that's the part that they have to learn to understand about themselves. I have to be willing to forgive myself.
And that's a hard thing for them to do.
Yes, it is. It absolutely
But
is.
you know, I always say that if you reach out for help, these people you're talking to help you, they do not know you from when you were a child. They don't know. They know you
That's right.
as you are today.
That's right. Absolutely.
People who have history on you will find excuses for the way you are. But if you go to a stranger, they're going to accept you as you are.
That's right.
There's no history there.
That's right.
So you have more of a chance of getting help by going to a stranger.
A healthy type of help.
Healthy, yes, because they're only going to see that you're suffering.
Exactly.
And they're going to help you.
That's so true. And that's the kind of help a person needs, because those closest to you are going to go one way or the other. They're either going to get tired of your actions and say, I'm done, that's it, kaput. Or there's going to be the willingness to tolerate and to look the other way and to enable. Either by supplying money or supplying items that the person, let's use an example. I know of somebody that just recently, her boyfriend has a problem with, I believe it's an opiate addiction, and she went and purchased the drug for him. And I just looked at her, I said, what are you doing? I said, don't you understand what happens in a case like that? I said, you are actually not only breaking the law, but I said, you are helping him to stay in his addiction. Whereas if you would just say to him, sorry, I can't, and I won't. I love you too much to do that to you. And she just, you know, I don't know what her thoughts were. She was very quiet, seriously. She didn't say anything. I wasn't telling her that she was a criminal.
No.
But she wasn't helping.
Yeah, but this is the thing with family and friends.
Yeah, that's right.
They don't want to see you suffer.
That's right. They also don't want to have to deal with the people coming off an opiate addiction or crack or cocaine. They become very volatile. Very emotional as they're coming down, and anything can happen under those. So that's the other component to it too, the fear of what are they going to do? Are they going to become irrational and get behind the wheel of a car and hurt themselves or somebody else, or are they going to come after me and beat me up because they're ticked off that I won't do this or I won't do that? So many components in that.
There are. I mean, none of it is a simple thing, but taking each individual.
That's right.
That's what it comes down to. You cannot put them all in a group and say, you're all alike. This is the way it is. This is the way it's going to be. It's not like that.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way at all.
Matter of fact, with my stepmom, this goes back to the self-incrimination. My sister became an addict late in life. She was in her 30s, late 30s, early 40s. The marriage was going sour. She decided, she doesn't live in Maine, she lives out of state, but she ended up, she never went to jail and never got caught by the law, but put her parents through hell. And she would have with her children, but she was smart enough to stay away from the kids. And I told her, I said, you did them a favor by doing that. You may not feel like you did, but you did. They stayed with the dad. But as it turned out, I was speaking with my stepmom one night, and we were talking about all of this. And I just told her, I said, you know, there is no one that can beat up on themselves on the addict, worse than the addict themselves. And she said, what do you mean? And she's a very intelligent woman, so she had the concept of what I meant.
Right.
I said, they themselves are going to keep beating up and beating up and beating up because they feel worthless. They feel like they've not only wrecked their lives, but everybody around them. And to a degree, they're right, because it's an addiction doesn't affect just the addict. It affects everybody.
The whole family.
Exactly, and the friends too. So I told her, I said, she is going through a situation where she is feeling like she can't do anything right. No matter what she says or does, it's wrong. And her self-worth has gone right down the tubes. And I told her, I said, the women that I work with and the men that I work with at the jail, they've all said the same thing. It's the beating up on themselves that sends them right back to the drug or to the alcohol.
Because they're not good enough.
That's right, exactly. And they feel like they'll never beat it, so why keep trying?
It's a hard climb. It's a long climb.
And it takes more than one climb to sometimes overcome it.
True. And the people who have climbed and they have that strength, the inner strength in themselves, boy, that is a lot.
You better believe it, it's a lot.
They want to make a change. They want to think about their future. They finally believe they have a future. And I think it's just amazing.
It is.
Now, we're almost running out of time, but there's another topic we want to talk about. A dog. Tell me about
the new little terror in my life.
What is the dog's name?
Luna, which is Spanish for moon.
Okay.
And she is Puerto Rican. She is a rescue.
Does she only speak Puerto Rican?
Just about.
Whoa.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I've had to learn how to deal with her. Bless her heart, we've had her about 3 weeks, almost a month now. And she is a Staffordshire Terrier. We in this country call them pit bulls because they have been traditionally called that, number one. But originally, they got the name from being put into the pit or a ring to fight to the death.
Yeah, I know.
And that is not the case with these animals. They are very loving pets, and it's usually the owner that is responsible for the direction, and any veterinarian will tell you that. But anyway, I didn't know about Luna. She was a surprise to me.
Okay.
My son adopted her. In this instance, she had been in Puerto Rico at the time of the hurricane. And the hurricane, I don't know if it destroyed her home, but she was displaced from her home and ended up in the hands of an organization or somebody that flew her, and maybe others as well, other animals, by private jet to Florida, where she was placed in quarantine. And then she stayed with somebody in Florida, I believe, for a short period of time, and then was flown by airlines here to Maine. Somewhere in that process, I overheard my son talking on the phone to a friend of his, and I heard him say, "Oh, it's a female." And I go, "Oh, no." We just recently put down 2 dogs a year and a half apart, and after having had them for many years. The second dog, my son hadn't had for that long, but he was very attached to her, and she was a sweetheart. Both dogs were, but the other dog we had had 15 years. This one, Chris had, I believe, for about 7 or 8 months, but he was very attached to her, and she had to be put down. Well, as it turned out, Luna shows up, and she is so high-strung. She's 3.5 years old.
Yeah.
She's got a personality all of her own, and I've had to learn how to relate to her, and I decided to do it with tone of voice. I asked one of the producers, Steve, please, do you know of anybody that can interpret? I came down here looking for you.
Oh my God.
You weren't here.
No. I can't interpret.
No, but I figured maybe you'd know somebody that could. And you weren't here. So I was talking to him and telling him, I said, she is so hard to deal with because of everything that she went through, Toni. She is terrified of the wind. She's terrified of loud noises.
Of course.
If you accidentally drop something on the floor, woo, she's right off.
Well, that's from the hurricane.
Exactly, absolutely it is. So I have learned, and separation anxiety right out the door. But she's learning to trust me. She's learning to trust Chris. And she knows my voice, and she knows the look in my eyes. And when I lower my voice, she knows she'd better pay attention. Then there are times when I'll talk to her soothingly. But commands, she's doing very well with commands. But my reason for bringing this up is because I want people to understand you can't just adopt these animals, whether it's a cat or a dog, and expect them to instantly fit in. No. They're not going to.
A lot.
They have been through an emotional trauma. And it's so hard because they need to learn to, first of all, here's an example. The second day we had her, my son woke up to her clawing at the screen in the second floor window of his bedroom. He thought she was trying to jump out. Now, maybe he was right. Maybe she was trying to jump out. I'm not sure. But I also got the feeling that it was either the 3 dogs that lived in the next house, right next door, that she was responding to.
Yeah, with the bark.
Yeah. Or she was trying to go back home. And that chokes me up because how do you explain to her, you are home now? Those other people in your life are no longer there.
With love. With just love.
Exactly.
Have you tried just to put in her water dish that herb called rescue?
No. I've thought about melatonin.
Well, yeah. Rescue, you just put like 4 drops in the water, and it gives them a calming effect.
Oh, wow.
And the pet stores have it.
That's good to know.
You could go to a health food store and get it much cheaper than a pet store.
Okay.
But that seems to help. The herb in
Thank you for that.
You know, Star Bethlehem is another herb that calms them down.
Wow.
And it gives them the confidence. But all you can do is just love.
That's right. And I've given her different little voice commands, like I'll say, I'll be back. I'll be back. And I make sure I get back.
Yeah.
And she'll be right there at the door, and it's waiting. Every time when somebody leaves, whether it's him or me, she runs to that window, and she stands up on her 2 hind legs, and she's in that window watching, and I'll go to the window, and I'll go like this.
Yeah.
I'll say, I'll be back. So she knows I'm coming back. And I try to be consistent with her.
You have to be.
Especially in these, with any animal, but especially, just like, it's like raising a child.
Yeah. You have to have consistency.
And she needs to know that when I'm upset with her, it's for a real reason.
Yeah.
And she needs to know that I love her in spite of being upset with her. So the important message I have on that, and I want to do a later show on how, and probably see if I could invite my veterinarian to come.
Oh, that would be great.
And be part of it, because he would be able to give some helpful hints to folks.
I think that'd be wonderful.
And,
the audience would love that.
I would like to be able to do that at some point.
Well, I do want to set up another show with you rather quickly.
All right.
To continue our conversation. And would you bring in Luna?
I would be glad to bring
Luna in.
She's already been introduced to the 2 Steves.
Okay.
And to Rosie.
Okay.
Rosie went crazy over her.
Oh, of course, of course.
But yes, I would love to bring her in, and I know she would love to come.
All right, then we're going to do it.
Okay.
I hate to say it, our time is up.
Oh, that's okay.
But we're going to do a couple shows where we can continue our conversation. Luna will be here, and Colleen, I can't thank you enough.
Well, I thank you, Toni, for having this type of a show. There are so many issues within the community, and we need to bring attention to them.
People don't want to talk about it.
I know.
And you have to talk about it, because if you don't air it out,
can't solve it. That's right.
It becomes a major thing in your mind.
And the elephant in the room.
And it's only our opinion.
That's right.
Everybody
exactly.
has their opinion. We're not trying to change your opinion. We're not trying to do any of that, but we're giving you another point of view on this.
That's right.
So you'll be back on soon, Colleen?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so very much.
I thank you.
You're welcome.
You're a blessing.
Oh, thank
You really are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our audience for watching our show today. And we'll be back to you shortly. Bye-bye.